In the annals of history, few figures evoke as much fascination, horror, and intrigue as Adolf Hitler, the dictator whose actions shaped the course of the 20th century. The final hours of Hitler's life, spent in a bunker beneath the streets of Berlin, are shrouded in mystery and myth. Yet piecing together the events of his last day provides a chilling insight into the mind of a man whose regime wrought untold devastation. April 30th, 1945, dawned upon a Berlin in ruins. The once proud capital of the Third Reich was now a battleground, with Soviet forces encircling the city and advancing relentlessly towards the heart of Nazi power. For Hitler, holed up in his underground bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, there was no escape, no hope of victory. It was to be the final act in a life defined by fanaticism and delusion. In the early hours of the morning, Hitler awoke to the grim reality of his situation. His inner circle had dwindled, with many of his closest advisors either dead or fled. Only a handful remained, loyal to the bitter end. Among them were Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, and Martin Bormann, Hitler's personal secretary. As the day progressed, Hitler met with his remaining commanders to discuss the increasingly dire military situation. Despite the overwhelming odds, he refused to entertain any thoughts of surrender. Instead, he clung to the delusion of victory, issuing orders to non-existent armies and dreaming of a miraculous turnaround in fortunes. Meanwhile, outside the bunker, the city was descending into chaos. Soviet artillery pounded the streets above, while civilians cowered in makeshift shelters, their hopes of survival diminishing by the minute. For Hitler, cut off from the outside world, the reality of the suffering he had unleashed upon his own people seemed to hold little significance. As afternoon turned to evening, Hitler made his final preparations. He dictated his last will and testament, railing against his enemies and proclaiming his faith in the Nazi cause. Then, in a shocking twist, he announced his intention to take his own life rather than face capture or humiliation. At approximately 3:30 p.m., Hitler bid farewell to his remaining associates and retired to his private quarters with his wife, Eva-Braun. There, in a grim echo of their wedding vows, they both ingested cyanide capsules. Moments later, Hitler also shot himself in the head with his service pistol. The end, when it came, was swift and brutal. In the early hours of May 1st, as the Soviet forces closed in on the bunker, Hitler's body was discovered by his aides. His remains were hastily cremated in the garden above the bunker, denying his enemies the satisfaction of desecrating his corpse. The death of Adolf Hitler marked the symbolic end of the Nazi regime, though the war would continue for another week until Germany's unconditional surrender. In the years that followed, the legacy of Hitler's reign would be examined and debated by historians and scholars seeking to understand the man behind the myth. Yet for all the analyses and conjecture, the final hours of Hitler's life remain a chilling reminder of the depths to which human depravity can sink. In the darkness of that bunker, surrounded by the ruins of his dreams, Hitler faced his ultimate reckoning. And though his death brought a sense of closure to millions, the specter of his legacy continues to haunt the world to this day. The story of Hitler's last day is not just a tale of one man's demise, but a reflection of the broader tragedy of World War II. It is a story of hubris and folly, of the consequences of unchecked power and blind ideology. It is a reminder that even the most seemingly invincible tyrants are ultimately mortal, subject to the same frailties and vulnerabilities as the rest of humanity. Amidst the chaos of Berlin's crumbling streets, Hitler's mind was a battleground of its own. As he faced the grim reality of imminent defeat, one cannot help but wonder about the inner turmoil consuming him. What thoughts raced through the mind of a man who had once wielded absolute power, now reduced to a fugitive in his own city? Perhaps it was a moment of reckoning, a fleeting glimpse of self-awareness amidst the madness. Did Hitler, in his final hours, confront the monstrous legacy he had created? Or did he remain steadfast in his delusions, clinging to the belief in his own infallibility? Psychologists and historians have long grappled with the enigma of Hitler's psyche. From his troubled childhood to his rise to power, every aspect of his life has been dissected in search of answers. Yet the question of what drove him to commit such unspeakable atrocities remains as elusive as ever. In his bunker, surrounded by the trappings of his former glory, Hitler was a man consumed by contradictions. On one hand, he was a charismatic leader who inspired fanatical devotion among his followers. On the other, he was a ruthless dictator capable of unimaginable cruelty. But perhaps what is most chilling about Hitler's last day is not just the actions of the man himself, but the complicity of those who surrounded him. As his inner circle dwindled and his empire crumbled, there were those who chose to stand by him until the bitter end. What drove these individuals to remain loyal to a man whose madness had brought the world to the brink of destruction? It is a question that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and the allure of power. In the face of tyranny, even the most rational minds can be seduced by the promise of authority and influence. Hitler's last day serves as a sobering reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the ease with which ordinary people can be swayed by charismatic leaders. But amidst the darkness of Hitler's final hours, there are also moments of defiance and resistance. The brave souls who risked everything to oppose his regime, from the soldiers on the front lines to the civilians who sheltered Jews from persecution, remind us of the power of ordinary individuals to effect change in the face of overwhelming odds. As we reflect on the last day of Hitler's life, we must remember not just the man himself, but the countless victims who perished at his hands. Their voices may have been silenced, but their memory lives on as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of evil. Hitler's final hours may be shrouded in darkness, but they also serve as a stark reminder of the enduring power of hope and resistance. In the aftermath of his death, the world vowed never to forget the horrors of the past. It is a promise that we must uphold, lest we risk repeating the mistakes of history. The fate of Eva-Braun, Hitler's longtime companion, is particularly poignant. As she joined her husband in death, she became an unwitting symbol of the countless individuals who were drawn into Hitler's orbit and ultimately consumed by his madness. Her story serves as a reminder of the human cost of dictatorship and the tragic consequences of blind allegiance. In the aftermath of Hitler's death, the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. The war in Europe was finally over, and the forces of tyranny had been defeated. But the scars left by Hitler's reign would take generations to heal. The Holocaust, the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews, remains one of the darkest chapters in human history, a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the dangers of unchecked hatred. As we reflect on the last day of Hitler's life, we must also confront the uncomfortable truths it reveals about our own society. The seeds of fascism and totalitarianism still lurk beneath the surface, waiting to take root in times of fear and uncertainty. The rise of authoritarian leaders and extremist ideologies serves as a sobering reminder that the lessons of history are never far from relevance. Ultimately, the story of Hitler's last day serves as a cautionary tale for future generations. It is a reminder of the fragility of democracy and the importance of remaining vigilant against the forces of tyranny. As we strive to build a better world, we must never forget the horrors of the past or the individuals who sacrificed everything to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated. Hitler's final hours may be shrouded in darkness, but they also serve as a beacon of hope, reminding us of the power of resistance and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of evil. In conclusion, the last day of Adolf Hitler's life encapsulates the tragic downfall of a man who wielded unparalleled power and brought untold suffering to millions. It is a story of desperation, delusion, and ultimately defeat. But it is also a story of resilience, as the world emerged from the shadow of tyranny to rebuild and renew itself in the aftermath of war. Hitler's final hours serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of remaining vigilant against the forces of hatred and oppression. As we continue to grapple with the legacy of his regime, we must never forget the lessons of history and strive to create a world where such horrors can never happen again.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from Knowledge Matrix and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.